it becomes about what do you want to do, not what you should do. Okay. So stop thinking about what should I do to have an edge and start thinking about what do I want to do with this stuff? Is there anything you want to do with it? Wouldn't it be cool? Treat it as if it's a playground and go play.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
Sa Indies! Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. I'm your host, Circa. With me as always, Jack McCarthy. How's it going, Jack?
What's up, dude? I'm excited for this day. I'm excited to be here with you. Excited to talk doom and gloom and positivity and happiness and sunshine and double back on our predictions about 2025 and talk about AI.
That's a lot.
We got a lot of ground to cover today, gang.
Yeah, so it's year zero here at Entrepreneur. We're bringing that 2017 style energy like we're a fresh new startup. And so we're paying a lot more attention to what the community be saying, okay? And in the spirit of that, I've been looking a lot more at the YouTube comments just to get a flavor of what people are saying. I'm not responding enough like I should, but I am taking in what you're saying. And it's going to inspire future content, okay? So just so you know, you're heard loud and clear. And in the first step towards making sure that your needs are met and your frustrations and your worries are appeased, we've noticed something about our AI episodes towards the turn of the year that we wanted to address with this extra special double click, double back, put a pin in it, circle around episode. And this is all about our AI episode. So we did 2 episodes predicting sort of 2025 in the music industry. And they received a lot of comments from artists worried that we were saying that like their lives are over. A comment from Matt Lafayette Music says, I love what you guys do and appreciate everything you're saying here. I just feel like you didn't give any hope to aspiring artists and producers. It seemed like you were advocating mostly for AI. I'm all for using AI, by the way. And as a producer and artist, it really helps me. The episode just seems a little bleak for artists really trying. Do you see hope for artists in the future, or is it mostly Chrome everywhere, which I imagine means clankers, bots? And so, yeah, that's kind of the spirit of this episode, is to sort of clarify our position on AI and hopefully give you a little bit more of a like, go do this now, right? Because we talked about changes that we foresee coming, but we didn't tell you what to actually do about it. And it kind of could have left you with this feeling of like, I'm screwed, aren't I?
Yeah. I think this is going to be helpful because while we talked about a lot of predictions as we turned into 2025, we did spend a good amount of time talking about AI. Circa and I have similar but different concerns, outlooks on the future of the world, the universe, AI, where it all comes into play, what that looks like for humanity and society. And I can totally understand now, looking back a few weeks, how maybe we didn't expand enough upon what you can be doing right now, what you can focus on, how you can get yourself out of a doom scrolling or a doom state if you're feeling like you're there. And I also want to just put out there, like, we're here to advocate for artists and creatives. We don't advocate for AI. You know, AI is a thing right now that you use. It's something that's being talked about. It's technology, but I don't think I'm out of line saying here, like, our goal at Entrepreneur across everything we do is always about advocating for creatives. You're our people. You are who we advocate for.
Yeah.
AI is just a tool in the toolkit.
Yeah, didn't have a lot of friends growing up. So artists are my friends, okay? All my friends, literally all my friends pretty much are artists.
Y'all are my people.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm always advocating for artists. I'm always talking as if I'm talking to my friend Drex Carter, who's called me up and asked me my opinion on the latest thing. And I'm trying to help him understand it and prepare for it. It's like that, okay? Talking to my artist friend. And so sometimes I might be a little bit, I might not give like the clarifying feel good statements because I assume you know what I mean, but in some cases you might not. So just in programming, we like to get the shortest paths out of the way first so we can deal with the longer paths. And that's what we're going to do here. The shortest path for today's episode is like, one, if you feel as if you listen to our last episodes and you feel as if you are screwed, I would like to say not, okay? And here's why I think that, is that in the history of pretty much since, I mean, you could take it way further back, but let's just go from the steam engine, right? And the Industrial Revolution. technological advancement makes almost every measure of human health and well-being just go up in sort of a never-ending parabolic curve towards the sky. And so my presupposition with AI is that if we get more conveniences, or if, by all means, if our jobs are obsoleted by AI, I don't think that means you starve. I think it actually means you flourish. It just might mean you need to find a different meaning of like what you do, right? Like you might have to derive different meanings. That's the shortest path. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. So I just wanted to get it out of the way. Like, don't feel worried.
It's interesting. We were talking just at the end of last week, me, you, and Jonah, and we were talking about like, well, what happens if in 5 years there's no labor, right?
Right.
Take this to the furthest extreme. Like, your work does not need to happen anymore. You don't need it to make money. You don't need it to eat.
Or it's just counterproductive for you to work.
Right. You don't need it to eat. You don't need it to put a house over your head. Like, let's take it that far, right? Cirque was like, well, what would you guys do? Like, I don't know if I would know what to, like, I think that's going to be the crisis that everybody faces, is like, what do you do? And I was like, I'd probably just go surfing and make more music, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think that your problems will be denominated in like, how do I eat? Right. And furthermore, I just think a lot of people who currently worry about that now will actually be better off. They will worry less about how to eat. I just think it's going to improve all metrics. It's just about how you feel. And you can tell that, right? In this internet age where literally anything you want can be delivered to your doorstep at a fraction of like the nominal value that it used to be cost, everyone's kind of more depressed than ever, right? like mental well-being does not track with like standard measures of health. So that's just to say that like your crisis will be one of like sort of figuring out how to feel about this, not necessarily in terms of like resources. So that out of the way.
It's definitely more of a crisis of meaning than it is a crisis of resources.
Yes, that's the only crisis we will be left with in the final analysis, is the crisis of meaning. There'll be no other crises.
I'm not trying to steer us into doomsday. That might make people more scared, honestly. And I can understand that if that does make you feel scared, but zoom out a little bit. It'll be all right.
I think that like world hunger, all-cause mortality, all of these things just plummeting constantly across the whole world would make people pretty happy. It doesn't. I guess it doesn't. But
yeah,
people tend to get really upset with it.
Well, look at it this way. Like, let's take music for a second, just to like go a little bit further on this. Like,
all right, this is a philosophy episode now. Let's go.
Yeah. Just take music for a second. Like, you didn't start making music so that you could build a music business.
Right. That's a good point.
When you started making music, when you first picked up an instrument, when you first started to sing, you did it because you liked it.
And you wanted people to like you, right? Am I alone here? We started doing it because we wanted to be more popular than we were.
For the girls,
time,
dude.
Right?
For the girls.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, or the dudes for ladies.
Whatever, or
whatever your persuasion is.
Whatever it is, yeah. Yeah, so let's get that out of the way. If you watched our episode and you felt as if like you should be worried about how you're going to eat, don't. I don't think you have to. I think you actually need to worry about other things. And so that's out of the way. Now let's talk about, will artists be obsolete because of AI? And I think that it's worth, this is like the next shortest path, is that like, hey, it's worth considering that you shouldn't bank your whole future on you becoming world famous, because it might be the case. One of the things that might be at threat is like, as a music listener, I'm going to have a lot more options. And if I have more options, well, as my options expand exponentially, my time in the day does not expand exponentially. It's fixed. And so if I have more options, just by default, I'm going to pay less attention to any individual option. Does that make sense? So it's like, if I can take all of my library on Spotify and then go to Spotify in the morning and be like, yo, I want to listen to a mix of like this and this, and then it generatively produces that for me, whether it be a playlist of existing tracks or making new tracks with collabs from the different people in my playlist, like, great. I'm going to naturally have my attention diverted a little bit, right? I'm going to be listening to a much greater diversity of music. Does that mean that you can't be an artist? Does that mean that no one will ever like your music? No, it doesn't. And in fact, like, as fun as generative AI is, as easy as it is to make something, tons of people don't. Think about how many people have access right now to make artwork and literature and research reports at a quality that is like top human level, and they still don't, right? It's like some people just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be people who generate professionally. Okay. And if you want that to be you, like, totally can be. Or if you want to blend that with your current mode of creation, or if you don't want to do generative stuff at all and you don't want to use AI at all, and your niche is like, I'm 100% human, no clankers, like whatever, it's just, I wouldn't expect you to become like friggin' Harry Styles. Like, I think that the era of Harry Styleses that are human might come under threat, but like, I don't imagine that if you're listening to this episode, like, you wanted to be Harry Styles in the first place. So I don't think it matters to you.
Well, I mean, and that kind of points to another, side topic here is like, so much of what we talk about on this podcast, and for so many of our listeners, like, we've been spending the last 8 years talking about how to build a business around your music that doesn't require you to become Harry Styles to have revenue. Maybe it's not your full-time thing. Maybe it is your full-time thing. Maybe it's one of many things that you're doing. Maybe it's one business in an arsenal of businesses that you have that supports your creative lifestyle. But to your point, Cirque, right, maybe the becoming Harry Styles or Taylor Swift or Beyonce or whatever isn't who you are anyway. And maybe with the technological advances that will happen in the next number of years, that will become even less likely.
Yeah, I'll say that if our episode made you concerned that we thought that like there would be absolutely no need to be an artist, I think that is only true insofar as your need to be an artist is not deeply personal to you and irrespective of like the attention that it gains, right? I think that like there will be a lot more attention to go around, but there will also be a lot more options. And so like naturally, the attention paid to any one option will have to decrease. But that shouldn't really matter to you, right? You didn't expect to win every heart and ear in the entire world, and that's still the case, right? I think it's a null quantity in all this, and you shouldn't worry. Like, if you wanted people to like your music, like, you'll still be able to do that. If you wanted to put out music that didn't feel arbitrary and meaningless for you to put out, I think that will still be the case. Now, will you be doing yourself a grand disservice in terms of productivity to not use generative tools? I think so. I think if you don't start learning how to because the thing is, dude, it's like, yes, mixing is an art, but mixing 1,000 tracks is not an art. Mixing one track is an art, right? Is eventually processes blend together and the artistry of them is lost because at some point you're just running a process.
100%. Anyone who's ever mixed a track knows that.
Yeah. And it's like my mix engineer, Dylan, he will have ones where he's like, I went off on this one. I did this cool thing. You can tell because he's excited about what he did. And then he's exercising his artistry. But 99.9% of the tracks he mixes are not like that. So he's now applying a learned artistry to it in a very non-personal way. And that just happens, right? Like, let's say you're a rock band and you have to pick pedals for your recording. And yeah, you're really excited about it the first time you make an album, and maybe the second time as well. But eventually your pedal chain just is your pedal chain, dude. And for different circumstances, you have a default thing you're going to use, and you're not really going to experiment much with it after enough time.
Yeah, and you're happy with that. The mixing example is such a good one, man, because as someone who mixes records from time to time and has mixed a fair share of them, like, I'm by no means like a award-winning mix engineer, but you definitely do. Like, you lock in, and there's some that you're like, man, I went all in on this. That's a really great way of putting it. Like, I know exactly what Dylan's talking about when he says that. Like, you get inspired by one song, right? You go really hard with it.
You do new things.
You do new things with it. And then if you're making a record, like an album, you might then take those new things and apply the template over the rest of the songs. I do that all the time. Like, plenty of artists do that. That's why we draw on mix boards and have tape with little marker points on them. That's why we save our sessions and why we save plugin settings and presets. We don't just do it because we want to. We don't just do it because, oh, maybe someday I'll need it later for something else. No, we do it because our brains are connecting something good pattern, something good somewhere else. This is how we function.
Yeah. And it happens to be in like, to give you an example, when I was doing my project, Some Kid Punk, there was a moment where we had like a day in the studio where my producer and my co-vocalist and writer, who's also an instrumentalist, just like wildly talented in all facets, they were like improvising over what my producer was producing. So my producer was like, had a beat going. He's playing on the OP1. My other buddy is playing on the piano, keys and bass. And they're like in outer space, right? They're like communicating with each other through improvisation. And that became a beat. And then it became the impetus for everyone else in that session that day to do something new when they went to do their part. And so I went to do my vocal part. And first of all, I wrote it in the tense and syntax of like biblical apocalyptic material. And then when I went to do the voice, I did this really high, soft voice trying to invoke like the Metatron, right? So it's like I did like falling on a Metatron, like, and I did that, and it freaked everyone out, and it became a voice like that. That's a creative moment. That's artistry. But next time I record a track, if I want to do a weird voice, like I'm just going to pick that one. I had my moment of inspiration. Now it's a template I can select from. And most of the stuff we do in music is that. It's not the moment of inspiration. It's after, when you now have it as a template you can reach for. Okay. Generative tools will allow you to take more inspirational cracks without the burden, the pain of going through the effort of experimentation. You can do experimentation in way quicker iterative cycles. Okay. So if I have an idea, I don't have to then take a shot. Like they got to set up the booth. Like take that voice, for example, right? They got to set up the booth. I got to go in. I got to try to find the voice, get it, see if they like it. If they do like it, I then have to like remember what it's like. And now I have a new template. With this, I could just be like, hey, reproduce this, like this vocal I just took, but make the voice like this with my voice in a future generative tool. And now I can ad infinitum. I could just be like, vary it. I can speak with regular words. I don't even have to type it, right? I could just speak to a device, say, no, that's not, pause it, go back and do this way, right? It's so much easier. And so I think that's what the magic of generative tools are. It's not for taking your inspiration from you. It's for, first of all, enhancing your inspiration, allowing you to iterate faster and experiment. And then also to stop spending most of your time applying templates when you could be experimenting. That makes sense?
For sure. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we see this all over the place. I see this every day in work, really, like in marketing work that we do, writing copy, writing emails. Like I've talked about this on the podcast before, but just to expand upon it a little bit further, like, and really give full perspective on what I mean when I'm talking about like use AI to write copy. Like I've said that on the podcast before, and I've said like, yeah, at the agency, like we use AI to help us write copy. Like our team uses it. When I say that, I'm not just talking about like, oh, we prompt ChatGPT once to write some copy. Like I'm talking about like, you know how to prompt different types of LLMs for different types of copy, for different types of purposes, for things like email, for things like ads, so on and so forth, for writing scripts, whatever it might be. It goes deeper than just like, oh, let me talk to chat right now and see what I can get out of it and maybe try to use that everywhere. It goes deeper than that. And I think that's something worth considering, that your process that you currently take for different things that you do in your music career right now, you should look at them and kind of critically analyze and be like, what is the process behind what I'm doing right now? Can I identify it? Is there a process? There's probably processes and things that you didn't even realize had processes.
Yes, there's going to be a certain learning curve to like using these things to their maximum potential, obviously. I think an instructive example is to just examine like major revolutions in recording technology and then apply this as like a template for your understanding. When multi-track came out, put yourself in like the 1960s, right? In order to get a song recorded, you get everyone that was going to be on the song in a room. Okay. Everyone's in a room, and then you are rehearsing the song until you can run it all the way through perfectly. There is no punching in. Okay. Furthermore, if you wanted to do a vocal, like a group vocal, even when there was punching in, it wasn't the practice at the time to just layer your vocals. You still got a live vocal of like 5 people standing around a mic, and that has a sound to it that you might still want. And so inevitably, when it became introduced that like, no, you can actually record your part and then we'll play that back in your playback and you'll record the next stack. And we can have one person do group vocals, background vocals. You have to imagine there was tons of people whose job it was to come and compose the choir or the group vocal, who are very resistant to this idea. There are people in the group vocal who are like, this doesn't sound like it normally sounds. There are producers who don't like it. There's all types of people who don't like it for whatever reason. Okay. It only becomes widely adopted once the convenience of it becomes too much to ignore. And once people start experimenting with the format, that's the really important part. First comes convenience, where it's like, look, don't have the money to do the group vocal with the rehearsals, or, we don't have the time, there's not enough space to record it, whatever. Limitations and conveniences drive adoption, but then experimentation comes on top of that. Okay. You don't want to be in the like, okay, I'll do it because it's convenient crowd. You want to be in the, I already do it, and now here's how we can do new stuff with it crowd.
Yeah.
And that takes jumping on the opportunity, seeing how you can work with it when it's frustrating to work with. That's really the secret, is like, while it's still frustrating to work with and not completely intuitive to use, jump in. That's where all the juice is. That's where you can be early.
And that's now.
It is. It still is.
It was 2 years ago, but it's also now.
Yeah. It still is now. Very much so. There's tons of people fading the opportunity or not wanting to jump in.
Dude, the recording examples are such a good one because there's so many of them, right?
Yeah.
You can take multi-tracking, then you can take the move to digital, then you can take the move to digital editing. We're not cutting up analog tape anymore, right?
Yeah.
There's so many examples where you can look at recording, the making of music on a recorded medium, and you can apply the same sort of, or at least examine the same sort of technological friction that the industry experienced, the creative has experienced. Apply that same level of thinking to what's going on with AI.
Ask your mix engineer if they know who Tom Dowd is. If you don't, they probably do, right? Tommy Dowd was a child prodigy of recording engineering back when it was CBS Records and guys in white lab coats doing the recording. Okay. Like, this was a science, and you were supposed to do it in a room. And the whole purpose was to make it sound exactly like that room. Okay. And there's a couple of child prodigies who started recording experimentation back then, but Tommy Dowd got really into multi-tracking. Okay. And when the first multi-tracks came out, like, that was his main thing. And as a result of sort of bucking this trend of like, we record in these stereo environments, we do it all in one take, that kind of thing. I mean, not one take, but what you're hearing is all one pass through. Sort of breaking that convention, put him in rooms with every single major recording house of the 60s, Motown, Stax, Muscle Shoals, okay? The Brill Building, right? And the Wrecking Crew. Put them in those rooms to fix their multi-track machines and then teach them how they could do stuff with them. Because he was willing to jump into that, he had all the tips and tricks. They just had to do it because they didn't have enough space. That's why they need this multi-track. That's why they're doing it. But then when he comes in, he can say, oh, but there's so much more cool stuff you can do with it. Check this out, right? So that's where you want to be. You want to be in that Tom Dowd space. You want to be in the space of like, oh yeah, well, sure, it can generate like this part for you that you don't want to source. You don't want to pay someone to record, but there's so much more it can do. Go check this out. So that's to say that, like, I think that there is a lot of space to be an artist in this technology. You just have to understand that this is artistry. Like, it's good. Just like the multi-track recorder is artistry, just like the electric guitar is artistry. And when it was introduced, was not thought of as like, this is art. Okay. If you can believe it, like, these things were not thought of as art. And the computer like making music on a computer was not thought of as art. It is today, but it was outright not at all.
Yeah, dude. Yes.
Auto-tune not art. Even today, people still kind of don't think art is art. But
there's jobs of assistant engineers where it's their only job to tune vocals all day long.
Yeah.
And they make money doing that. They have a living doing that.
Yeah. And there's technique in it now. It's not just make this vocal sound perfect. It is, hey, give me hard cuts on the note changes.
Right.
To sound more robotic. And then there's a way to do that that has this shimmer to it that people really like. There's technique and abstract qualities of the method that are now art.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, generative AI will be art. And just because it makes your life easier doesn't mean it's not artistic.
Dude, and so much of this is like, I apparently have the tendency to drive us into philosophy, so I apologize. But so much of this is like, art is what you make it. And I literally, right before we were recording this podcast, I was guesting on a podcast, and the host asked me, how do I balance, being a creative person with all of the business things that I do? Like, how do I feed that creative beast inside me when I'm not making music? I'm not living the third grade dream that I have of being a rock star right now. How do I feed that? And I'm like, dude, I have been saying this for so long that marketing is creativity in the same way that making music is creativity. But I think to go like a step further than that, I definitely have an outlook on life that like most things can be art if you want them to be.
Oh, yeah.
And that means playing with AI. That means Circa and I solving a business problem together. That means me talking to an accountant and figuring out how to save on some taxes. Like, if you look at the world as art, anything that you do can be part of that creative mess that's inside of you. And again, this is highly philosophical.
Yeah. Art is not what you do, it's how you do it. I totally agree. It's like when I am creating an app, now that I'm a programmer, it's art for me. I do it in the same way as I used to do music. It's the same. It's the same process. It's like I am now putting my opinion and what I think the style should be and what I think is it's really, you know what it is? Art is injecting your opinion and style and your worldview into tasks that could be done by anybody.
Yeah.
It's how you do it that makes it art. And if you're copy and pasting a tutorial, yeah, that's not very artistic. Why? Because you're not putting your opinion in it. You're not asking yourself, how should this be at every point? And that happens a lot in music. Like the whole albums come out where no one at any point stopped to think, how should this be?
Yeah. Yeah.
They just did the template, right? And that happens all the time. So like, just because it's music that wasn't generated by AI doesn't mean it's art. And just because it was generated by AI doesn't mean it's not art. I think it's all about how you do what you do and how interested and engaged you are in making it what you believe is the right way, quote unquote.
Yeah, 100%. Andy Warhol is a really good example of an artist that built process into what he did.
And did things that people would not have at the time thought was art.
Yeah, it was so process oriented, almost like assembly line,
Yeah, 100%. So we kind of spent a lot more time on, I guess, the philosophical points here, but we did want to give you guys a little bit of like, do this now. And so my do this now is to go use Suno. I'm going to be honest with you. There's two major tools right now, Suno and Udio. I've used Udio and I feel like it's incredibly unstable. Every time I go to try to use Udio in a way that like I can actually then go use in a track, it's just really unstable. It doesn't give me reliable output. That might be how I'm using it. So I'm just going to say for now, my do this now doesn't involve Udio, it involves Suno. And if you've ever used Suno, you might not have liked the output, or you might have thought it sounded very like crappy and robotic, or the lyrics were just really lame. And I kind of agree with you. If you go one shot Suno right now, you go to suno.ai, create a free account, you get some free credits, and you go play around with it. I think you won't like what you get until you take a song that you've written but haven't yet produced, record a scratch to it. It could be your vocal only. It could be you with a little guitar, whatever. Just a scratch to give it the idea, the syncopation of the lyrics, the tempo, the key. It's going to draw all that from your idea. Upload it as your example. Give it the lyrics and then give it the description and see what it comes up with. you can do this with a whole song. You can do this with a guitar part that you do it on acoustic and say, I want this to be electric. I want it to have like these effects. You do whatever you want. It can be any part of the music, but just go do it on Suno. And then by all means, if you go do it now, go in the comments of this video and let us know how it worked out, or link us to it, or tell us like how to find it on Google, because I would love to hear it. But what I think people are not seeing is, just like with generative AI, like text models, like you cannot just go here and tell it what you want. You have to give it way more specific instructions than that. Ideally, if you want great output, you're putting it on rails a lot more. And I find that a scratch recording, a rough demo, is a great way to put Suno on rails. And when it comes back out, it's like, man, this is my vision for the track told back to me without me having to go into the studio and work with an engineer and do all this stuff that I actually don't like doing. I like writing the song. I like coming up with it. I like singing it. I like all that stuff. I don't like the rote bullshit. Okay. And you can do it without that. So go do this now. Get a free Suno account. Use your credits to upload a rough demo of anything, full song, part of a song, instrument, whatever. Give it to it and then give it your prompts. Get back and then work with what you get out. You can do remix. So anything it spits out to you, you can click on the 3 dots, click remix, and then give it another prompt to change it. You can edit it. So you can select segments of it and say, hey, change this way, and it will spit back out the whole thing. And you can also save output. So if you get good output that you really like the template of it, you can save it as a persona and then use that persona in future generations. And it'll carry a lot of the same characteristics and qualities to the next time you use it. So go do that now. That's my do this now.
Yeah, to add to that, like the last time I used Suno was back in September last year, and I was experimenting with it. And actually, I was in the middle of writing a song, and it was like 11:30 at night, and I was getting tired, and I was producing a demo, and I was just like hitting roadblock after roadblock at this point. Like my ideas were starting to get kicked for the night, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to mess around with something in the same way that I would open up Splice to go like experiment with new samples or find new loops or something like that. I was like, let me just open up this Suno thing and see what I can do. And so I prompted it with a snippet of the demo that I was working on, and it generated some melodic ideas that then I was like, okay, like, you know what? There's something with this. There's something that there's a nugget here that I like and that I can take and use for where I want it to go. And then I closed the app, and that was it. And I kept writing the song. I went back to my DAW and I continued writing the song with a little bit more of a creative kick in the butt than I had in that very moment. And I think what I want to say about that and how I kind of look at AI tools, whether it be ChatGPT, Suno, whatever you might be using or playing with, is sometimes it gets you from the place of like, man, I'm kicked right now and I need a head start. And sometimes it'll give you that head start. It'll clear you of the blank page syndrome sometimes and just give you a little bit of a boost. It will be the friend next to you that isn't next to you right now, or the person that you can't call on the phone because it's too late at night and they're sleeping.
It will also, you know what happens is when I write a song, because I write melody and then lyrics like in the same shot. Sometimes I'll like seed. So I'll make a chord progression, do my sections, chord progressions for each section, or like loops for each section, and then blah, 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 blah. Use it like onomatopoeias. Mumbling in melody. And then I'll take those mumbles, the rhythm of them, the syllable count of them, the meter of it, and I will translate it into lyrics. But I usually do that in one shot. Then I have an idea of what I want it to sound like. I have this sort of everything that I generated in my head about how it should go and how it should, what the final product should be like. It's there, it's fresh. But I've really only codified it in the form of a demo and some lyrics. So a lot of what's in here is going to go. Give it a month, give it, a couple of weeks. It's going to be gone and it'll morph and it'll be unreliable. What this allows you to do is instead of going through that 2 week to month process where you're actually making it real in the studio, I can make it real right now. And then I can stay in this place where all that stuff is fresh and experiment with it. and have like a more high fidelity snapshot of my brain state at that time. You're not losing as much inspirato as you lose in the journey from, I think this is roughly done, let's go make it, to it's finished and it's kind of not what I had imagined.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And let me give you guys another example. And this is another thing that you can do, right? Last week, this is an example from my life personally. Last week, Jonah and I and Andy on our IndieX team, we had a meeting, the three of us, to talk about bottlenecks that we faced with some of our clients last year, in particular, like challenges that they faced about their marketing. We had a series of meetings. Actually, we had 3 of them. And at the end of them, I had taken like copious notes, and I was like, man, I really need to sit down and like digest these. But I was hitting the end of the day, and I was like, I've got other things that I need to get done first. But I know that if I let this sit, I'm going to lose the spark that we ended the meeting off on. And my ideas are not going to be as clear. The fidelity is going to be gone. It's going to be fuzzy, just like you were talking about with songwriting, Circa.
Yeah.
All of my notes, I fed them into an LLM, and I said, hey, I'm going to start, I want to start analyzing these ideas. This is what I have down so far. These are my thoughts. Can you help me fill in the gaps of things I might be missing so that I can take this another day and, bring it to its completion? And I got a great summary and a great outline and some next steps to continue along with. And this is kind of like simple day-to-day stuff that you can think about. So like if you come out of a meeting about your music marketing, for example, and you're feeling fired up and you've got your notes down, but you're like, man, I'm stoked right now, but in 2 days I might not be as excited, or I might have forgotten, or something might have distracted me. You can use these tools in a way to help you, one, like further clarify and codify the things that you're feeling in that moment so that you don't lose them. And it's kind of like that productive spark. You can capture it a little bit faster and get yourself out of the monotonous haze of like, I got to move on to something else, or something else is pulling my attention now, or it's the end of the day and I need to go to bed, or I need to have lunch, or whatever. It allows you to be more productive in your work. And that's an example that's like, I could have told you guys right now, like, oh, start using AI for writing your social media copy or something like that. That's an easy one for me to say. But I wanted to give you one that's a little bit more practical and maybe something you don't think about as much.
I guess my last do this now, because you just reminded me of it, is I have a ChatGPT premium account. The reason I would suggest you get one is it's only $20 a month and you get advanced voice mode.
Oh, it's so good, dude.
You might get some advanced voice mode with free. I'm not sure. The reason I highly recommend it is because this is terrible input. Like, this is horrible, low fidelity, low speed, prone to constant error. Even if you're a great typist, touch typist, you're still going to make tons of mistakes. It's wildly inefficient compared to how fast you think. Speech is a lot closer to how fast you think. So speech is a much better interface. And with advanced voice mode, you can, next time you're starting to think of, I want to write a song, like you have a shape of like what a song might be like. It might come from stylistic inspiration where, okay, I really have been listening to a lot of 1950s gospel, right? At the intersection of like gospel and rock and roll. And so I want to write some stuff in that style. Okay, you can talk to Jippity about that. It knows everything about that. Okay. Its parameters were tuned on a corpus of text that includes every text that's ever been written about that. And so if you start talking to it about that style with advanced voice mode, it not only will help you pull out, like you can ask it things, you can give it an example of what you're thinking, and it will abstract that to the style. You can do whatever. And when you're done talking, you can pull it up on a browser and all the text that it said and that you said will be there. Okay. So if it gives you an example, if it gives you something to go research, like you don't have to like listen back through the recording. It's all transcribed for you. And it's just so much vastly quicker. And you think different when you're talking because now you are unleashed. You are not thinking about typing the last thing you thought 10 seconds ago. You're saying it and your brain is operating in faster iterative cycles. And it's just a way better way to sketch and plan. And so is it like artist specific? Not necessarily. It's just something you should be doing for everything. Could also really help you with artistic stuff.
100%. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up advanced voice because it's really great.
It's so good, dude. Every time I use it, I put it on my little phone stand and I'll be like, all right, like I'm coding today, right? And I'll be like, all right, I want to build an agent that has search capabilities, but I don't just want Google search capabilities. What other search options are there out there? And it immediately says, oh, there's Tavili, there's Firecrawl if you want to do scraping of websites. And it also has like embedded search. And I'm like, okay, cool. Those are great. Can you grab the API docs for those? Yeah, he's got them already. I'm typing code already for API docs and references I don't even have in front of me. It's just telling me what the parameters are for an API call or whatever. And that's kind of the magic of it. Every time I use it, I'm like, why do I ever type to an LLM?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And it has, furthermore, one last thing, advanced voice mode now has video. So you can click on the video button and be like, what settings should I put on my channel strip here if I want to get X sound? And it can see your channel strip and it can see the knobs and it can see their current settings and be like, turn this one 2 dB up, adjust this. Like that's like such an insane cheat code for life, dude. So yeah, if you're not using it, go use it.
It's super worth it. I've never regretted that subscription one bit.
Yeah.
As we maybe round out this episode a little bit, is like, we don't know where this is going. We have ideas, right? But we don't know where this is going. We don't really know where all of this is going to take us. So I can't sit here today and be like, yeah, I hope this makes you less anxious. But I do hope it makes you less anxious. And I hope you see that like there are ways that you can apply using AI tools and processes in what you do every day to give yourself more of an edge, even if that edge is only for today, is only for this year, is only for next year. It doesn't really matter. If it gives you an edge or helps you in any way right now, it's worth it. I've said so many times that like AI is a great playground for creatives. It really is. And I think you should embrace it. And as you do, you'll probably find yourself being a bit less anxious.
Yeah. I think also my final thought here before we leave is just we're approaching an era. Everyone in tech feels as if we're approaching an era where having an edge, quote unquote, as Jack just said, kind of won't exist anymore. There will be no edge, right? Everyone will have access to technology that effectively makes you Superman, regardless of like how poor, how rich you are. It's kind of going to be about the same. Things will greatly equalize and there will be no scarce access to resources, and thereby everyone can have whatever resources they want to have. And so having an edge loses all its meaning, because previously edge is really meant to say, it's a greater ability to access scarce resources over other people who might want access to them.
It's I'm here first.
Yeah, it's literally like I will get more than other people because I have this edge. But more than other people will become meaningless, right? And so edge is denominated in what should I do to have more resources than my neighbor? Okay, well, in an era where your neighbor and you can have as much resources as you want, it will never matter. It becomes about what do you want to do, not what you should do. Okay. So stop thinking about what should I do to have an edge and start thinking about what do I want to do with this stuff? Is there anything you want to do with it? Wouldn't it be cool? Treat it as if it's a playground and go play.
Yeah. Well said. I hope you guys dug this. I hope it makes you feel good. I hope it gives you hope.
Yeah.
From previous episodes that maybe didn't give you as much hope. I hope that this was an injection of hope to all of you.
Go play around. Have fun.
Peace out, Indies.
Can y'all really feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast?